Good morning. I hope you had a great weekend. Welcome back to Crafting and Crime Daily, where I describe live trials, except no trial today. And I was in my live yesterday. I'm like, why is there no trial today? My brother tells me it's a holiday, Juneteenth. I'm like, well, what the heck is that? It's it's a federal holiday. It just happened a couple years ago that they made this a federal holiday, the commemoration of African American slavery. So I'm thinking, is there going to be a parade? What am I supposed to do? Do we barbecue? I don't know. Do we exchange gifts with our black friends? I have no idea how to commemorate this day. So no court, no mail. Yeah, I know. Okay, I am working on my diamond painting again. So I'm going to bring you a true crime story today. I have a really interesting story about this guy who is missing. He's a fugitive to this day. Nobody knows where the heck he is. But I'll tell you all about why he's wanted today. So look, I'm working down here. I've added some. Oh, let me turn the light pad off so you can see. Look at all the pretty pink I've put into the flowers. Yes. So I'm working on the black right now. Oh my goodness. So this weekend I had my live yesterday morning, and then last night was game night, and I had so much fun playing Zelda. Oh God, I love that game. Got into a shrine at the end that was just whoosh, over my head. Tried to solve it, died so many times. They kept making me start over, so I'm like, okay, that's it. We're done. But here's what I finished this weekend. Yes, it's my Pride gnome for June Pride Month. Okay, let me goes this way. Look, it's the Pride gnome. Isn't he adorable? Look at his hat. He's got a Pride hat on. Yep. So lots of color in this one. This is going to look so cool in the big blanket that I'm making. All different gnome squares. So I'm getting ready to start the scuba gnome. It's a gnome that has scuba gear on, like the goggles and a one of those. I don't know what those are. Scuba things. Okay, scuba things. Oh my God, listen to me. Let's talk about this case. So this case, we're getting back to Utah and Idaho. Home of the Vallow Daybell territory. Like, what is it about Idaho that people get murdered there? I don't know. It's terrible. But anyway, this happens back in 2017, but it gets its roots way before that. So we're first going to talk about this woman named Nadia Medley. Nadia, she immigrated here from Germany, came all by herself. She left her family behind. She ends up in Utah. Now she's an atheist, and she's living in Utah amongst the Latter-day Saints of Utah. So really out of her element. She has this love for animals, so she's working at a pet store, and she meets this guy named Todd Medley. And she and Todd hit it off, and they get married. And a couple of years later, they have a little girl, and they name her Peyton. So in 2011, she gets pregnant again. Nadia gets pregnant again, and she has a baby who passes away. In 2014, oh my God, Todd passes away of a heart attack. So now it's just Peyton and Nadia living together. And Todd, at the time he passed away of this sudden heart attack, he didn't have a job, so he left nothing for Nadia. No life insurance, no, nothing, nothing. So she's trying to make ends meet, and she decides, she can't make it at the pet store because she and Todd were running the pet store. She just loves animals, dogs, cats, birds, horses, everything. She just loves animals. Peyton too. Peyton had her own YouTube channel. God bless her. So she becomes a massage therapist and opens up a massage business. So along comes this customer named Mike Bollinger. They hit it off right away. She's like, oh, this is Mr. Right. Oh my God, stars and hearts and flowers, and they start dating. And a year and a half into their dating, she finally gets up enough courage to ask him. She saw one of his paychecks. She knows he's a private pilot. He makes at least 10 grand a month. I'm just going to tell him I can't make ends meet after my husband died. And could you help me out with the mortgage? So she asked him 2, 3 times. And then after that, he's like, it's going a little fast for me. I think we need to slow it down. So they break up. Meanwhile, he gets a job offer in Boise, Idaho. And he accepts the offer. So he goes looking for a place to live, and he finds this farm. Now, I've heard people from Idaho say it's not really a farm, it's a house with a lot of acreage, but it's not what a person in Idaho would consider a farm. Like, there are houses 30 feet in either direction of this farm, but it's probably about 5 acres or so, and there's a hen house on it, and but it needs a lot of repairs. So he starts in, and he's doing the repairs, and he's feeling very, very lonely. So, he just can't picture his life without Nadia. So he calls Nadia and he says, "Why don't you and Peyton move here to Caldwell, Idaho, where I've just purchased a farm. I know you love animals, so come live with me." So Peyton and Nadia, they pack up, say goodbye to their friends. Here's the thing about Nadia. I told you Peyton had a YouTube channel. Nadia was all over social media. Here's a picture of me and Mike doing this, and now we're camping, and now we're hiking, and now he's playing in the yard with my daughter, and we're going out for dinner. And like, this girl, Peyton, thought of him as her dad, and, they were having this bang up time together. So she and Peyton, they move, and they're on the farm, and she's still doing videos. Um, Nadia, she's posting videos of the animals. Here's the farm. Look at this beautiful farm that I've got. Look, here's the hen house. Here's the house. All of it posted on social media. So they're living the life in Idaho. Meanwhile, Peyton's still doing her YouTube thing. She's communicating, texting her friends. You know how kids are. They're always on their phone. All right, that's Nadia. Now we're going to talk about another story. That's the story of Cheryl. Cheryl Baker. Cheryl is in her 40s, and she's a teacher, longtime teacher. She's been teaching at a school for the deaf and blind for 3 decades, is approaching retirement age, and she decides she's going to fly to Alaska on a trip. And on this trip, on the plane, this guy sitting next to her is named Gerald. They introduce each other. Hello, I'm Gerald. And they exchange phone numbers. Fast forward, they start dating because they find out, on this plane ride, hey, I live in Utah, you live in Utah. Yeah, we both live in Ogden, Utah, which, by the way, is where Nadia and Mike lived, in Ogden, Utah. So Gerald and Cheryl realize they live in the same town. They start dating and they get married. So fast forward a couple years later, they Gerald says, they're starting to think, what are we going to do for retirement? We got to start looking at what that looks like for us. And they're like, we'd like to get some property and have a little farm. So Gerald says he gets an offer of a job in Boise, Idaho. So he goes to Boise. Does this sound familiar? So Gerald goes to Boise, picks out this farm, and says to Cheryl, I found a farm for us to retire. Yes. So Cheryl puts a mortgage on her house through the bank and gets the farm in her own name. So I don't know what was wrong with his credit, but anyway, so she gets that house. It's in her name, but she hasn't seen it yet. And meanwhile, Gerald, she and Gerald are traveling around. They go to Mexico. They go to all these different places, and he's going back to Idaho because he's fixing up the farm for them to move into. So there's one time she's got some time off from work. This is in June. It's school's out for the summer. So she decides, I'm going to surprise Gerald. I'm going to go visit him in Idaho at the farm. I'm going to surprise him because I've not seen this farm yet that I bought. I want to go see it. So she goes and she travels. And this is in early June. So, what happens in early June? So, in early June, some of the friends of Nadia, now we're going back to the first story, some of the friends of Nadia say, hey, we haven't heard from her in a while. She posts very regularly on Facebook, and we haven't heard from her. Plus, she was supposed to go back to Utah, drive back to Utah, pick up her horses, and then return to the farm. So she get the people where she was going to pick up the horses from say she never showed up. So they call her phone number. She doesn't answer. They text her. She's not responding. She's not answering her phone calls. Meanwhile, Peyton has stopped communicating with all of her friends. And they're like, wait a minute, this is a teenager who's not using her cell phone and talking to her friends. Something's going on. So they call the Caldwell Police Department and say, could you go out and check on our friend? Just do a welfare check. Here's the farm that she lives at with her boyfriend, Mike Bollinger. So they go out there and immediately they realize, well, something's going on here. What is going on this farm? It had a horrendous odor to it. So they're walking around. They go to the house. They knock on the door. No answer. So they make entry into the house, and there are dead animals all over the house. Dead dogs, cats, birds. They're dead. And it looks like they starved to death. Then they find some snakes and some other things that they're still alive. Then they go outside of the house. They didn't find anybody home. They go outside of the house. They go over to the hen house, and the odor gets worse. And it's all a bunch of dead chickens, starved dead chickens. So then they go to the hay shed, and they see a blue tarp in the hay shed. Now, when they get up, as they're approaching this hay shed, they realize, okay, this is where the odor's coming from. They get to the hay shed. Keep in mind, this is June. They get to the hay shed. There's a tarp. They remove the blue tarp, and underneath are 3 unrecognizable, decomposed dead bodies. Because in June, if you get killed in June and you're left in the hot weather under a blue tarp, you're going to decompose very quickly. They couldn't even tell the sex of these people that were there. So they get them all to the medical examiner for autopsies. It's at least 10 days before they can tell who these bodies are. Not till like June 20th. I think it was June 19th that they searched this farm, and then it's June 20 something when the autopsies are completed, and through DNA the bodies are identified. It was Nadia and Peyton. Those were 2 of the bodies. The third body was not Mike Bollinger. Where's Mike Bollinger? We don't know. So, why am I talking about 2 different stories? Because Mike's first name was Gerald. Yeah. They soon find out that Gerald is married to a woman named Cheryl Baker. Yes. And Cheryl, they find out, had made a surprise trip to the farm in early June. And thus we have the third body. Cheryl Baker was the third body. So no one knows what went on in that house. They all died of single gunshot wounds, supposedly execution style. But just to tell you a little bit about Gerald Mike Bollinger, he had been married to a woman named Jackie. That was his first wife. They were married for 10 years, and both very, very religious, both deeply involved in the Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints religion. And it got to the point where he started beating on her. And she finally went to their bishop in the church and said, I need to get a divorce. He's beating on me regularly and I can't take it anymore. So she gets a divorce. She gets custody of their 2 sons. And he starts to visit them. And then he starts beating up the boys. And then she's like, no, you're not visiting him. anymore. So that relationship ends. Then he meets Cheryl on a plane bound for Alaska. They get married, and then I've told you the rest of that story. So Cheryl was on her way to surprise her husband, Gerald Mike Bullinger, in Caldwell, Idaho. We don't know what happened when she got there. We don't know, maybe those two women met up and they're like, she's like, "Hi, I'm Mike's wife. Well, I'm his girlfriend. This is my daughter. Come on in, have some tea. I'll put a pot of coffee on. I just made this apple pie. Would you like a slice?" And then Mike comes home and he's like, "Uh-oh, I got caught." Anyway, so now they're looking for Mike Bollinger. So they find out that he was at a local restaurant in a town, like one town over from Caldwell. They think the murders occurred around June 9th. They're not discovered till 10 days later. So Mike has a 10-day head start on them. So God knows where he could be. So they find that he's been to this restaurant the next town over. Then the following day, he is seen at a what do you want to say? A dealership, service part of the dealership where he picks up his wife's, Cheryl's Ford Focus, had been there for service. He picks it up, he leaves his truck there, and he goes off with her Ford Focus. Well, on the 11th, that Ford Focus is found at a place at the entrance to this very, very dense forest, Brigger Teton County, Wyoming. 200 miles away, like a 4.5 hour drive, and a place called the Pacific Creek Campground. And they started searching this area, and it is thousands and thousands and thousands of acres of just dense forest. Like, you don't go camping in this forest unless you are fully geared up. And there had been several sightings of a man within that forest who didn't have any gear. And this was kind of before winter came, and all the deaths occurred in 2017. Now we're looking for him in 2018. They're still looking for him in this forest. They've got helicopters, dogs, horses, infrared. Can't find him. So did he hitchhike out of the forest? Well, out of the park. I mean, he could have left the car there and hitchhiked away, or did he go into the forest, kill himself? Now, his first wife, Jackie, says no, he's a sociopath. Sociopaths don't kill themselves. Did he die from exposure? Because that winter was very, very, very cold, and no one could have survived that. Even with the best of gear in Wyoming, could you survive? He was known to be an outdoorsman, that he liked hiking, he liked camping, and, but was he a survivalist? I don't know. I think he got caught with his pants down, and so who knows? I mean, he's described as 240 pounds, 6'1", brown eyes. He's in his 60s, mid 60s by now, and police think that he is still out there somewhere living. They don't think he's in this forest anymore. They think he probably got out of the forest if he even went in, and that somehow he's still surviving somewhere. If not, then he's dead in the forest. A bear would have gotten him. Something would have gotten him in that forest. Bigfoot, who knows? So, interesting story. Yeah. Who wants to go to Idaho? Not me. I'll pass. I'll pass. We either got the second coming of Jesus in Idaho, or we got the farm with multiple wives. Yeah. Crazy, crazy story. Yeah. So that's the show for today, guys. I know, short show. I'm going to continue working on this, get you up to date on the Scott Peterson trial tomorrow, which resumes tomorrow. It is said that the prosecution will conclude their case tomorrow, and it will become the defense's turn to put on their side of the case. So this case is wrapping up. I don't know if Scott Peterson plans to take the stand. The other trial that I have been covering now for several months is the trial of Lucy Letby over in the UK. And I can tell you that the defense has rested and that even today they are doing closing arguments. The prosecution is doing their closing argument. Lucy Letby was on the stand for 14 days, not hours, days, 14 days on the stand. After that, they put a plumber on the stand. A plumber, oh my God. Because there was one time, one of the babies, that her excuse was that there was a sink backed up, and yeah. But it was only during one of the episodes of one of the babies. Not, we're talking about 22 different episodes where she tried to either she murdered a baby or she attempted to murder a baby. Allegedly. The jury's going to get to decide this week. Yes. And then, I mean, this thing started back in October of 2022. Guys, 8 months it took them to try this case. So I will bring that. I will bring you up to date on how the prosecution concluded their cross-examination of Lucy Letby and what the closing arguments were all about. That you'll get that later this week. So have a great day, everybody. I hope you enjoy today's holiday, however you choose to celebrate it. And I'll see you tomorrow in the next video. Bye.